Hi, this is Carolyn Jaymes, and I am here with Amora, Melchizadek, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the incredible journey he's been on in spirituality. So welcome, Amora. How are you today?
I'm very well. How are you, Carolyn?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so glad we connected. We connected on Facebook, and I've watched your posts for so long, and they're just so interesting. You've done so much and been through so much.
It's been a long old journey, but it's also been incredibly interesting.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. So tell
And
me a little bit about how it all started with the walk-in process. That's something I'm very intrigued by as it's happened in my life. But is that what started your journey on spirituality?
it certainly represented the biggest shift in my journey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I could just say that the walk-in for me occurred at a point when I was 14 years serving police officer in West Yorkshire.
Oh, that must have been interesting.
Uh, it created some difficulties because up until the point of the walk-in, I wouldn't consider myself as being spiritual in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, my outlook on life, my perspectives, my morals, all of that changed. And I began to recognize that there were certain things within systems, and police being one of those systems, that I wasn't comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to find a voice that wasn't always popular.
Yes.
And it was very difficult to talk about anything spiritual or paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
because that kind of setting, everything is considered black and white.
Yes. Yes.
And my experience since the walk-in is that things are far from black and white. There are many shades, there are many realms, and they can cross over at times. So flexibility is certainly something that I had to learn.
Exactly. Now, was there a defining moment? It sounds like this walk-in happened and things started to change. You started to question your own morality and that. But was there a defining moment, and how did you find out that it was through a walk-in process?
The discovery of what fully happened for me has taken a number of years to unfold. And even this week, there are some other details that have come to light.
Oh, good for you.
So the picture is constantly forming, as it were.
Yeah.
But the initial change, there are some very obvious things.
Right.
I think the best thing is for me to describe what actually led up to the experience that I'm calling walking.
Oh, please do.
So at the time, I was an undercover police officer, and I was doing what is called controlled buys. So I would go out, obviously not dressed as a police officer, and I would make purchases of heroin and crack cocaine. And this would be to get evidence against the people that were dealing these Class A substances. There was one particular person that I had identified as someone that was a criminal in a number of different areas. But he was already aware of the fact that I was a police officer. So this was going to make it a little bit difficult for me. And I attempted to portray myself as a good cop turned bad.
Ah.
And I was very naive. And I ended up undergoing an accidental overdose of factory strength amphetamine.
Oh boy.
And so it was the day after my encounter with this gentleman, where I began to experience some physical sensations that led me to believe that I was in the process of dying.
Ah.
So what happened was, well, first of all, I didn't feel particularly well, but then the next thing that happened was it felt like ice cold water was entering my body through my toes,
Wow.
and it was gradually working its way up. And my first thought was, oh, if this reaches my head or possibly even my heart,
Gonna freeze my brain.
then I'm dead. I'm gone.
Yeah.
There was no panic. There was just that thought was very focused for me, is that this could be the end.
Right.
And so I recognized that I was in the situation I was in through my own choice.
Mm.
So the next thought that occurred to me was, this cannot happen because I know someone else will get the blame for it, and it's all my own doing. And I think that was a key in the process of the walking, was that it was a selfless thought.
Right. It's honorable. Absolutely.
And then the next thought, which I also think is very important when it comes to the walking procedure, is that the physical body had a choice as well. And my physical body was saying, it's not your time to die, you have something to do. I wasn't aware of what that something to do was.
Usually aren't.
But there was a very strong feeling that there was something left within the physical realm that I had contracted to complete.
On a soul level.
On a soul level.
Right. Okay.
I would say that those two key thought procedures within the circumstances that I found myself were what set up an exchange of souls.
Mm-hmm.
And this ice cold water sensation got as far as my abdomen and was starting to climb up the rib cage. So I was thinking, it's getting pretty close, whatever's going to happen. And then all of a sudden, it began to recede.
Ah. At what point? Do you think it was the point of the selfless act that it started to recede?
I would say that it followed the second process of, I don't feel that it's right that this body is willing to go, okay. You know, to actually go through a physical death.
Right.
And it seems that was the point at which the sensation of the ice cold water then dissipated. Mm. Now, at that moment in time, I wasn't aware of anything special occurring, other than the fact that I was still walking. Ultimately, I didn't have to be hospitalized, which was also something that I was thankful for.
Yeah.
But then, basically, there was information that I just knew that I had never researched or been interested in previously in my life. Mm-hmm. So I would say up to the point of having this experience, I was very much a on the booze, wanting to be out with the lads, beach holidays. It was Magalufin, Tenerife, and on all the party islands. It was that kind of life.
Yeah.
And I had no interest in sacred geometry or in any sacred places. And all of a sudden, I'm devouring spiritual books like nobody's business. And to be fair, I think since that, what I'm calling a walking experience occurred, I've probably only read about 3 books that fall outside of the spiritual sphere.
Now, when you were reading those books, did they make sense to you? Did the tumblers click in your head and, oh, okay, I get all this?
The one that I particularly like, and I'll tell you the reason why I like it as well, is a Celestine prophecy.
Oh, yes. Great.
So that particular type of work is what I call faction.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a story, but it's a story that is telling truths. So the art of the novelist is to engage the reader, but everything that's presented within there is something that has or can occur.
Do you mind if I use that word? Because that describes my book and I love that word.
Absolutely, you can use that, yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, that was a major one for me. And then following my experience, I left the police force 2 years after the walk-in. And I literally walked out.
One day you were done.
That was it, yeah. I'd been kind of tested out by spirit after the walking experience. And so I seemed to attract other things that were leading me in a completely different direction. Mm-hmm. The timing of the walking in relation to what subsequently happened seems to be part of the whole blueprint. Mm-hmm. Because the relationship that I was in at the time, within a month of the walking, one of the daughters of the then girlfriend, she was hit by a van that was traveling at 40 miles an hour.
Oh boy.
And so she was hospitalized, and I think that the figures are something like 85% of people that are struck at that speed as pedestrians end up dead.
Yeah.
So she got a fractured skull, she got a fractured collarbone, she got a fractured pelvis, and she was in a coma. And I got a phone call at work letting me know what happened. And I just said, right, I'm taking 2 weeks off. And I wasn't bothered whether they were going to give me it. I'm just saying I'm taking 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
And so I went over to the hospital, and unbeknownst to me at that time, part of the process with the walk-in was that I'd received an attunement of Reiki via spirit. Because I'd never heard of Reiki at this point, but I find myself there, and I was there overnight, and even though there was no obvious consciousness because she was in a coma, I was just talking to this 14-year-old girl as if just like I'm talking to you, basically, and just kind of reassuring her and thinking, well, there might be aspects of her that is still listening. There might be aspects of herself that don't understand why she's where she is. And so there was just this very one-sided dialogue that was going on all through the night. And her auntie came in the morning, and as I was leaving to go and get some sleep, she just went, "Oh, the colour of your aura!" She says, "It's. I've never seen green like that, and it's
Really?
like massive. It's massive."
Oh,
So I looked at her because I didn't know. I'd not taken an interest in these areas
did you know what
before
an
that.
aura was at
So
that
I said, what does that mean? Does that mean I'm sick? And she got, no, it's all right.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And so I did this for 2 nights. And what is clear is that there was healing that was coming through me.
Oh.
And whilst I was doing the best I could with what I understood at the time, it was definitely channel energy that was helping out this girl.
That's wonderful.
And to the extent where the nurses were saying, we've got a decision to make here, because we've been trying to keep her in an unconscious state deliberately to try and get the bruising on the brain down.
The pain, yeah.
But she's fighting it so much that we can't use any more drugs to keep her under. So we're just going to let it run, and hopefully she's going to come round. I mean, we would like it to be in a very static state for a few more days, but she's clearly fighting, which they took as a good sign. And
Thank you.
and I was there the following morning, and again I was talking, and I just sensed that she was about to come to.
Wow.
So I held her hand, and I started talking to her, and I'm saying, like, I think you're starting to wake up. I don't want you to try and open your eyes. I don't want you to try and talk. I said, because you've got some tubes in your mouth and they might feel a bit uncomfortable. But what I want you to do is, if you're hearing me and you can understand me, I want you to squeeze my hand twice. And then her lips moved just a tiny amount. And then she squeezed my hand twice.
Oh.
I mean, that moment was like such a prize.
Oh.
Because it also informed me that as much as she had the physical injuries, that her mind was undamaged.
Ah, wonderful.
So then I was able to ask a few questions, and ones that only required a yes or no answer. Mm. And we used the squeezing of the hand technique. And what I didn't discover for several months afterwards was that when she was talking to her grandmother, she said, the weirdest thing happened to me when I was asleep. She said, I got visited by 2 angels. Mm. She said, and they've got the queerest names. She said, one was Archangel Zedekiel, and the other one was Melchizedek.
There it is. There it is. Wow.
So I figure that I was meant to go through the spiritual awakening process via the walking, mm-hmm. with the timing right to be in a place where that healing could take place.
Absolutely. And it was all so new to you, but it had to happen. It was going to happen, whether you realized it or not.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What's Amora? That's great. And then look at what was accomplished from there. That's a beautiful story.
And so, subsequently, I ended up with 3 people in 1 week talking to me about Reiki. And like I say, I'd never heard about it at the time that that healing process took place. But there's just the thing about threes as far as I'm concerned, and when three people start talking to me about something I've never heard of in the space of a week, it's like, okay, you better start listening. Yeah. So I did go down the usual route for getting the attunements, and my involvement with Reiki has been through the Usui lineage, which is the earth energy variety of the number of different Reikis. And being a Taurian myself, maybe that's why the earth energy sits very well with me.
Yeah.
So kind of that's how I got into healing.
Wow. And then from there, your whole world must have opened up. I mean, this happens, and now all of a sudden, okay, pay attention to Reiki, and then from there, what happened?
Yeah, well, whilst we're on the subject of Reiki, personally, I don't feel that enough practitioners of it pay attention to the deep impact that it can have on you in your personal life. And particularly if you go as far as being a Reiki master, because it is such a path of service that you're volunteering to do, that you've got to be ready for really massive changes. And for some people, you know, for them, the most important thing in their life is their relationship. And so you have to consider what happens if your spiritual path takes off like vertical takeoff.
Like yours did.
And your partner or your husband or wife doesn't do the same, or might not even be willing to take that path. Now, there are a lot of people on the spiritual path that is their main focus in life. But you have to do a lot of inner work. And so even people that have found the spiritual path, for some people they'll go so far and then they don't wish to pursue it at the same rate of knots that they began, because it can take its toll. It's very tiring doing a lot of inner work. And
there's fear there too. When you're just starting, there's indecision, there's fear, is this really happening? So a lot of that happens as well.
Well, for me, the whole opening up to spirit world was a big eye-opener.
Yeah.
Seeing people doing transfiguration work and having spirits that introduce themselves by literally jumping into my body, that kind of thing. I wasn't impressed, but fortunately, I found a teacher in some awareness classes that was able to help me out somewhat.
So talk a little bit about that. How did that show up for you? What was that experience like?
Which bit?
Part of this. Spirits jumping into you.
It was uncomfortable.
Was it? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a physical jolt. And for me, there was this whole fear about, you're not going to talk through me. You're not going to talk through me. I'm not having that. I'm not going to relinquish control of my voice box to you. Because at one awareness class, when the transfiguration work was being done, each of us took it in turn, going into the box with the red light on. And so some people transfigured in a much more obvious way than others. And when it came to my turn, mine was a very strongly visual change that took place. And the temperature in the room dropped several degrees, according to people that were there watching. But I had been made aware that with these spiritual encounters, we have free will. So I decided, right, okay, I'm I'm open to someone overshadowing me, presenting themselves through my physical body, but I don't want you talking. So I was okay. Somebody else obviously didn't have the same knowledge that they can say no.
Oh.
And the spirit came through and used her voice.
Oh boy.
And it was a male voice that came through her as well.
Wow.
And poor thing, she absolutely freaked out because she just wasn't ready for it.
And was she, when this happened to her and this male voice came out, was she cognizant of what was happening, or was she stepped back? Was her spirit stepped back so this other could come forward?
I don't know what her internal mental process was in relation to permissions. I suspect that it wasn't anything that she discussed, and certainly any fears that she had not been discussed. So
yeah, you said you can't have my voice, but come on in.
Yeah. So it kind of just happened in the way that I discovered that spirits can actually jump in. Mm-hmm. So it's like, oh, I'm not having this. And I think this is an important thing to let people know, is that we do have an absolute right. It is our sovereignty, is our physical being, and the other levels that are attached to it. So we can say no.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask, while this was happening with you, and you say it was a visual, a strong visual, was it a strong visual for those looking at you, or a strong visual for you?
It was a strong visual for people looking at me. What I was getting was a sensation of my nose broadening. I could feel my hair going all curly. I could feel tribal scars appearing on my face.
And they saw this?
And they saw this, yeah.
Amazing. That's amazing.
And the only information which was a thought transfer was that this was an African tribal king. Mm-hmm. And the only bit that I was uncomfortable about was when my head started turning and I wasn't making it turn. And he just kind of calmed me down and said, it's okay, I just want to see who's here.
Okay, so now his reasoning, if this was a tribal king, what do you think the reason was for this? For you specifically at that time? Do you think there was, or just, hey, I think I'll take a ride? Or was there a reason?
None was given to me, and I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But nor did I ask the question, and that's something else that people don't often think about. It's like after the event, it's like, oh, I wonder what that was about. And it's like, well, did you ask?
Yeah.
So I didn't ask. It was like, ooh, this is cool. This is okay. I'm not sure about that. We'll just have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah. So that raises a couple of questions, though. But you finish, and I'll ask after.
Well, once I was a little more comfortable with the process, I was surprised that it was a tribal African, because I have no societal or blood relations or even contact with anywhere in Africa. So that one was completely out of the blue. And I was thinking, I was sure that if something would come through me, it would be of an alien nature.
Is that what you thought? Yeah.
And then I'm thinking, well, maybe I could ask. And soon as I asked if there was an alien presence that would like to come through me, the people that were running the session said, okay, that's enough.
Oh, really?
And they brought it to an end. And my suspicion is that they were aware of the thought, and they considered that whatever could have come through might have been too much for the people that were in the audience.
Oh, could be. Could be. Now, do you think that this African tribal king could have been another life?
I've really no idea.
I wonder. I know one of my past lives, I was an African doctor. But
what I would say is that subsequent to that, I've gone around the world 3 times, and so I spent a number of months in different indigenous tribes, because I like to have a broad understanding of different cultures.
That's wonderful.
So I spent time in Fiji with the Fijian Indians. I spent time with the Hopi Indians in Sedona. I spent time with the Maoris in North Island, New Zealand. I've been to Australia a few times because I needed to understand more about the Aborigines.
Where now? Where do you live now?
Okay, I'm currently living on the island of Gozo, which is just off the north of Malta in the Mediterranean Sea.
Oh, you poor thing.
It's tough, but somebody has to do it.
Hey, I want to get back to what you said about the spirit coming into you, and just answer, if you can remember, answer a few questions that people might have about that. Being, can that happen? Do you know if that can happen at any point with anyone? Because that could really, you were open to it, but that could really scare the heck out of a lot of people.
When I made a choice that I was ready to open up to a deeper level to spirit, I began attending the awareness classes at Spiritualist Church. What it became very clear to me was that just by making that decision, the spirit world sees like a flag above your head saying, I'm open.
Got it.
Now, as I said, I wasn't happy about a spirit just jumping into me. I also wasn't happy about spirits that would want to talk to me, and they would make it difficult to get the information that I wanted from them as to who they were and what they wanted, etc.
Yeah.
So it's a big distractant, and pretty much they were just like any Tom, Dick, or Harry, and it was just like they were passing through and wanted to say hello. There was no depth of purpose to what was going on, and I thought, right. I thank all of them for their interactions.
Of course,
but
always grateful.
But what I then did was I appointed my guardian angel as a gatekeeper.
Oh, good. Good.
And I said, okay, so I know that you're looking after me, and you know the kind of communication that I am open to from the higher realms. So if there is any other dimensional being that wants to communicate with me, they must now come through you.
Beautiful. And that he will vet, or she will vet for you.
Absolutely. Now, this doesn't mean that every encounter with beings from these other realms is going to be enjoyable. But what it does mean is that whatever encounters I have with them are going to be part of my ongoing education.
Right, there you go. There needs to be a purpose. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
Not just, hey, let me just jump back in. This feels good. Good for you. There's your free will kicking in.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
I know that you wanted to hear more about the walking side of things.
No, not necessarily. Whatever you think is helpful, or just you'd like to share, please.
Well, I'm kind of thinking where you might put this video out. So it might be useful for some people to know that the story can sometimes be a number of years in getting the full details of it. So it's not something that you get a certificate. There's nothing written down. There's no guidebook that comes with it. So everyone that is a walk-in or has the various types of soul exchange, soul sharing, soul braiding that can go on has a very personal experience of what goes on.
And they're all different. Yes.
So what I want to do within this video is be as objective as I can be about what happened.
Thank you.
And so it does seem that in a substantial number of cases that we're talking about walking events, there seems to be a near-death scenario. Another common indicator after an event is that the soul that comes in is not comfortable with the birth name of the physical being that they have entered. Because that has been prescribed effectively to a different entity altogether. Now, I think the names that people become attracted to once they have walked in can give us clues where the soul came from.
Really? How is that?
Our minds are not as strong as often we would like them to be. So there is that element, and then there's also the element of wherever the ego within the individual sits. And that can be big ego or little ego. And neither of them actually are serving the purpose of our physical vehicle, other than when they're stepping in terms of ensuring our survival. Now, that is one good purpose that the ego has, because it's very good at keeping us alive. But recently, I had to acknowledge that the soul that now resides in me is not of human origin. And I had been going, no, it's an old soul maybe, but it's no. I can't accept,
guy from Montana.
I can't accept that it's from somewhere else. And this was despite another experience that I will describe to you, where the actual name that I've taken comes from. So the Melchizedek line has been pretty strong for me, and certainly through the healing that I described, but also through some travels that I've been guided to take. I was led to do some multi-dimensional work in a place where, within a dream, I was just given the Arabic nickname for the place that I was looking for. And it was only when I'd been taken on a Celestine prophecy-like journey through Egypt, down to Dahab, and then over into Petra via Mount Sinai, that it began to unfold. And at some point, my direction had been veered by a lovely couple of young ladies who kind of kidnapped me, and I put up such a fight.
Yeah, I bet you did.
So they took me to a hippie paradise, and they introduced me to bareback horse riding. But they told me that during their journey that they had been subjected to having their possessions stolen, and that there was a hotelier at a particular place in Petra that had taken good care of them. And they said that if I was headed in that direction, could I please give their deepest thanks to him? So ultimately, my journey took me, I found this hotel, and I mentioned that I'd met the girls, and they were like holding him in very high esteem and saying that, you know, what he'd done for them had helped them substantially. And so he led me to my room, and 10 minutes later he knocks on the door. He said, would you be so kind as to come for a drink with me this evening? And I went, yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Sure.
So then he took me to this 5-star hotel, and his was only like a backpacker's place. And so our drinks in front of us, and then he just looked me in the eye and he went, why are you here?
Oh.
And he was looking into my soul. At which point I said, can I just have a minute to meditate, please?
How do I answer that?
And I thought, well, hey, if he thinks I'm crazy, what have I got to lose?
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing. So I'm going to tell him the truth.
Yeah.
So I told him that years earlier, I'd had a dream. In this dream, I'd been given a place name. Not only was I given a place name, I was given map coordinates to make sure that I got it right. Mm-hmm. And that was why I was in that place. I was on my way to this place called Faku. And he said, can you tell me anything else about this place? I want to make sure I understand exactly where you require to go. And that was the bit that I had to meditate on. I said, okay, this is the bit that I've not had previously. I said, this is a place of great antiquity. It's a place, it's a cave, and it overlooks the Dead Sea. Mm. And when I said that, he just had the biggest smile. He went, I know exactly the place, and I can have someone take you there.
Ah.
And it turned out that it was actually the biblical Lot's cave.
Oh.
And on the side of this particular cave, there is an archaic temple that had been built. And there's one of the things that they used to adorn their old buildings with is mosaics. Yeah. And there are some very interesting sacred geometrical symbols that are still able to be seen there today.
And you were guided here.
And I was guided there, and I had to do a meditation and create a multi-dimensional peace power station thing. And the whole purpose for going there at that particular time, it turned out, was that there is prime ministerial elections going on in Israel. Mm-hmm. And as happens on a regular basis there, when it comes to the election time, there's a lot of saber rattling that goes on in order to get the most votes. So they're never particularly nice in that area of the world towards the Palestinians and other Arabs.
Right.
And so it creates a great deal of unrest.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mission effectively was to be there as a peace worker. And well, that was the first occasion that I visited there. And earlier this year, I had to go again and do some tweaks to the multidimensional space and peace zone area, and it had to be extended up into Syria.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
So the bit about the political situation was revealed to me when I was sat on top of Mount Sinai watching the sunrise.
Oh.
All night long, in my head, I kept singing 2 John Lennon songs.
Which one?
One was Imagine, and the other was Give Peace a Chance.
Of course.
And then I wasn't alone at the top of this mountain. There would have been maybe 30 people there.
Mm.
And as the sun came up, I looked around and everyone's got their cigarette lighter out and they're waving it.
Yeah.
And then we all went and hugged each other. And then spontaneously, without a word of a lie, everyone began to sing Imagine.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's very affirming.
Oh, that's beautiful. What an experience.
So it's like, okay, so seems I'm a peace worker. Why me?
Me.
and then the voice of God says, well, because if you were an Israeli, if you were an Arab, you would be too close to the situation.
Right. Right.
Is your screen going up and down, or is it?
No, I can see yours is though.
Oh, good. So I was sufficiently distanced from it to have no bias.
Exactly.
And then what I was told was that Israel was never meant to be a physical state, and that Israel was meant to be a state of heart.
Oh, wow.
Which means it's nothing to do with color, caste, religion.
No.
It's to do with what we hold here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
So, I've gone off the subject again of the
No,
the
it's okay. No, it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
But that's right, because it was part of the travels that I've done. So a few years back, when the last Sai Baba was alive, I ended up staying at his ashram in Puttaparthi.
Mm-hmm.
And I was engaged in healing someone that was staying there. And whilst I was in the process of that, a complete stranger walked up to me and she said, "Excuse me, but you do know that you were a walk-in, don't you?"
Oh, they knew.
I went, "I'm listening."
Yeah, keep talking.
So then she said, "Well, the reason that you don't know this bit is that you wouldn't have been able to take it at the time." Mm-hmm. So, still whilst I was in the police force, I'd been married for a number of years and I ended up getting divorced. Now, I've got a son that's now 23. And a year before he was born, I had another son who was stillborn a week before his due date.
Mm.
And this complete stranger said, the son that you lost is the walking soul that you now carry.
Oh, oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
It is, because at the time of the physical loss of my son, I wasn't at all on my spiritual path. I wouldn't have been able to accept that information.
Right.
I had to go through the grief process.
Absolutely.
Because that is all part of the learning. It's like I was saying, there are things that we have to go through that are not always enjoyable.
Mm-hmm.
But it's what we learn from them, what we're prepared to learn from them.
Absolutely.
And, you know, there are events that can affect us, that can devastate us, and they can really bring us down. But as far down as we can go, the same dimensions we can go up.
Yeah.
So that means that there are more joyful, blissful, peaceful states that most people don't reach as well.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And what so many people think are happiness is not even close.
Yeah.
Yeah. So through all of these journeys, what do you think? What is the biggest thing you learned?
Okay. The biggest thing that I've learned is that being happy is the most spiritual duty.
How did you come out to find that? How did you find that? Because it's true and it's deep and it's not what you think.
Because people think that if they had X amount more money than they have, they will be happy. Or people think, if I had my twin flame with me, I would be happy. What they don't realize is that if they had that X amount of money, if they had that twin flame with them, and they hadn't discovered that happiness comes from inside, they would not have the experience they believe they would have given those circumstances.
Yes.
Now, I won't deny that there are benefits from having a little more cash than most of us have.
But you just have to respect it. You need money to do this or that, but it should never be your God.
It's just a means of exchange.
Right.
The one really positive thing that money does is it takes away the stress about covering the next bill.
Right.
That is the best that it can ever do for you, but it doesn't bring you happiness.
Yeah.
That has to come from inside.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I think this is a great place to stop. That was a beautiful message. Thank you so much, Amora. I'm so glad we had a chance to talk. Thank you for all your insights.
Well, thank you for inviting me on here.
We'll do it again.
I've enjoyed you listening.
Thank you so much. We will do this again, absolutely. Thank you.
I look forward to another chat. We've not even touched the shamanic side of stuff yet.
And I do want to do that. Thank you, Amora. We'll talk again soon.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye.